My fiancé said, "My parents don't approve of you. They think I can do better." I replied, "Then you should." That night, I transferred the lease to her name, canceled her credit card, and moved out while she slept. 1 week later, her whole family was at my doorstep begging me to take her back. The funny thing about having your heart ripped out is how calm you can be when it happens. No screaming, no crying, just this weird, icy clarity that takes over. I'd been with Natalie for 3 years, met her right after college at a friend's housewarming party. She was smart, beautiful, ambitious, everything I wanted. We moved in together after a year, got engaged after 2, and were planning the wedding when everything fell apart. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. Natalie's parents, Richard and Caroline, were never exactly warm to me. They were the country club type. Old money, private schools, vacation homes in the Hamptons. I came from a middle-class family in Ohio, put myself through state college with loans and part-time jobs, and was still building my career as an architect at a decent but not prestigious firm. When I'd meet them for dinner, they'd ask pointed questions about my career trajectory and whether my firm worked on any notable projects. Caroline would reminisce about Natalie's ex, who was now at some hedge fund in New York. Richard would talk about friends' sons who were doctors or executives. I always brushed it off. Plenty of people have difficult in-laws, right? And Natalie would always squeeze my hand under the table, roll her eyes when her parents weren't looking. I thought we were on the same team. The day everything changed was nothing special. A Thursday in April. I came home from work tired after a long client meeting. Natalie was sitting at our kitchen island staring at her laptop. "Hey," I said, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door. "How was your day?" She didn't answer right away, which was unusual. Natalie was always talking about work, friends, something she saw on Instagram. The silence was my first clue something was wrong. "I had lunch with my parents," she finally said, still not looking up from her laptop. "How are Richard and Caroline?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light as I opened the fridge to grab a beer. "They're concerned about us." I paused, bottle halfway to my lips. "Concerned how?" "About the wedding." "About," she hesitated, finally looking up at me, "about whether you're the right choice for me." I set the beer down untouched. "And what do you think?" "I think they want what's best for me." "That's not what I asked." She sighed, closing her laptop. "They pointed out some things I hadn't really thought about, like how your career doesn't have the same potential as someone in finance or medicine, how we'll never be able to afford the kind of life I grew up with, how we come from really different worlds." "We've known all that from day one," I said, my voice still oddly calm. "It never seemed to bother you before." "It didn't, but thinking about the future, about kids someday, I don't know." They made some good points. "Such as?" "Like how you're so content where you are. You've never talked about making partner or starting your own firm. You're just comfortable being average." That stung. I'd never claimed to be exceptional, but I worked hard and took pride in my designs. I wasn't changing the world, but I was building a solid career doing something I loved. "What exactly are you saying, Natalie?" She twisted her engagement ring, the one that had cost me 3 months' salary, but that her mother had called quaint when she first saw it. "My parents don't approve of you," she said finally. "They think I can do better." The room seemed to tilt slightly, like a ship adjusting to a wave. 3 years together, a year of engagement, countless I love yous and future plans, and it came down to her parents' approval. "And what do you think?" I asked again, my voice very quiet now. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I think maybe they have a point. In movies, this would be where I'd plead with her, remind her of our love, promise to become worthy of her family's approval. But that icy clarity I mentioned, it kicked in hard." "Then you should," I said simply. "Should what?" "Do better, if that's what you and your parents think." She looked startled, like she'd expected an argument or tears. "Ryan, I'm not saying it's over. I'm just having doubts. Doubts about whether I'm good enough for you, because your parents said so." "It's more complicated than that." "Is it?" "Sounds pretty simple to me." I walked past her to our bedroom, her confused expression following me. I took a shower, letting the hot water wash over me as I thought through what needed to happen next. By the time I got out, I had a plan. Natalie was in bed when I came out of the bathroom, scrolling through her phone like it was any normal night. She glanced up at me. Can we talk more about this tomorrow? I'm tired, and I think we both need to sleep on it. Sure. I agreed easily, climbing into bed beside her. Tomorrow. I waited until her breathing slowed and deepened around midnight. Then I got up silently, grabbed my pre-packed gym bag from the closet, and went to work. First, I logged into our apartment's tenant portal. The lease was in my name, with Natalie as an occupant. We'd set it up that way because my credit was better when we moved in. I submitted a lease modification request to the landlord, explaining that I wanted to remove myself and transfer full responsibility to Natalie. I knew this would require her signature and landlord approval before being finalized, but initiating the process would make my intentions clear. Our landlord, Mr. Peterson, was reasonable and had always liked me. I was confident he'd work with Natalie on the transition if she chose to stay. Next, I logged into my bank account. Natalie had a credit card on my account as an authorized user. We kept our finances mostly separate, but this card was for household expenses. I removed her as an authorized user and requested a new card for myself. I also made a list of all the utilities and services in my name. Electricity, internet, streaming accounts that I'd need to either transfer or cancel after giving her proper notice. I wrote a brief note explaining that I was leaving, that I'd initiated the lease transfer process, and that I'd send for the rest of my things later. I included that she had a month to figure out if she wanted to take over the apartment or find a new place, and that I'd handle the utilities in the meantime to give her time to transfer them to her name. I left the note on the kitchen counter along with my key. Then I walked out the door. I'd called my buddy Mark earlier that evening while Natalie was in the shower, asking if I could crash at his place for a few days. He'd agreed without questions, the sign of a true friend. When I arrived at Mark's apartment at 1 a.m., he opened the door in his boxers, looking sleepy but concerned. "You okay, man?" "Not really," I said honestly, "but I will be." Over beers on his couch, I explained the situation. Mark, to his credit, didn't try to convince me to go back or work things out. "Her loss," he said simply, clinking his bottle against mine. "You can stay as long as you need." The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Calls, texts, and voicemails from Natalie, all increasingly frantic. "Where are you? Call me back right now. I can't believe you just left like that. The landlord called about a lease transfer. I can't afford this place alone on my salary. You canceled the credit card. How am I supposed to pay for groceries?" That last text was particularly rich. Despite her family's wealth, Natalie insisted on being financially independent, which in reality meant living within the modest salary from her entry-level publishing job, while her parents covered her student loans, car payments, and funded a generous emergency account she rarely touched. It was a point of pride for her, but one that now left her unprepared for actual independence. I didn't respond to any of her messages. Instead, I called my boss and explained I needed a few personal days. Then I spent the next week apartment hunting, eventually securing a small but decent one-bedroom across town that I could move into the following week. The rent was higher than my share at the old place, but I could manage with my recent project bonuses. Over the next few days, I methodically rebuilt my life. I stayed at Mark's apartment, sleeping on his couch and slowly gathering essentials for my new place. I updated my address everywhere, since I still legally had access to our old apartment until the lease situation was resolved. I arranged for a moving company to collect my furniture and larger belongings on a day I knew Natalie would be at work. Mark agreed to meet them there with the spare key I still had, supervising to ensure they only took my pre-agreed items. I also ordered the basics I would need immediately for the new apartment: bedding, kitchenware, toiletries, and had them delivered to Mark's place. By the time my new apartment was ready the following week, I had a plan for a smooth transition. Natalie's messages continued, evolving from angry to pleading. "Please talk to me. We can work this out." I didn't mean what I said. I was just stressed about wedding planning. My parents were wrong. I know that now. I finally responded on day 5 with a single text. "I'll be collecting the rest of my things next week. The utilities are paid through the end of the month, giving you time to put them in your name if you're staying. Please let me know a time when you won't be home so I can finish moving out." Her reply was immediate. Please don't do this. I love you. Too little, too late. On day 6, I got a surprising call from Richard, Natalie's father. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Ryan, he said, his usual haughty tone replaced by something almost humble. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Richard. Please. She's not doing well. That's unfortunate, but not my problem anymore. Look, he sighed heavily, I may have overstepped, said some things I shouldn't have. You think? Can we meet? Caroline and I would like to speak with you in person. Against my better judgment, I agreed to coffee the next day. Pure curiosity, I told myself. Nothing more. When I arrived at the cafe, I was shocked to find not just Richard and Caroline, but Natalie and her younger brother too. The whole family ensemble. What's this? I asked, remaining standing at their table. Please, sit, Caroline said, her usual perfectly composed face showing signs of strain. We want to talk to you. I sat reluctantly, as far from Natalie as possible. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally immaculate appearance disheveled. Richard cleared his throat. Ryan, I owe you an apology. What I said to Natalie about you was unfair and short-sighted. You think? I repeated. Yes, he continued. The past week has made it abundantly clear that you were far better for Natalie than we gave you credit for. How so? Caroline jumped in. Natalie has been absolutely devastated. We've never seen her like this. Not eating, not sleeping. She truly loves you. I looked at Natalie, who was staring down at the table, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. And it turns out, Richard continued, looking uncomfortable, that Natalie was also not entirely forthcoming with us about your career. Her brother looked you up. I'm a big architecture nerd, her brother interjected. When I actually Googled your name, I found your portfolio. You worked on the Westbrook Tower? That's incredible. And you're listed as lead designer on the new Riverside development? Dude, that's major. I shrugged. I've been doing well at the firm. Why didn't you tell us? Caroline asked. Because it shouldn't matter, I replied simply. I'm an architect because I love design, not to impress my fiancée's parents. Richard had the grace to look ashamed. We were wrong about you, and wrong to put those doubts in Natalie's head. You didn't put anything in her head she didn't allow, I countered. She's an adult who made her choice. I made the wrong choice, Natalie finally spoke, her voice hoarse. I was stupid and insecure and let them get to me. I've regretted it every second since you left. We're here, Richard said, to ask you to reconsider, to give Natalie another chance. I looked at them all, this family that had judged me, found me wanting, and was now desperately trying to backpedal. Why the change of heart, Richard? Because it turns out I might be successful after all? No, he said, though his eyes shifted away briefly. Because I've never seen my daughter this heartbroken. Whatever you think of me, I do love her. The truth was, I had never really talked about my career achievements with Natalie or her family. Not out of secrecy, but because I didn't define myself by my work successes. The Riverside development had been a breakthrough project that I'd been pulling long hours on for months, often coming home too tired to discuss the details. Natalie had always seemed more interested in talking about her publishing world anyway. And I'd been content to listen rather than boast about my own progress. Please, Ryan, Natalie reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me. I was wrong, so wrong. I love you, not what you do or what you earn. But you didn't defend me, I said quietly. When they said I wasn't good enough, you agreed. I was confused, stressed about the wedding, having cold feet. It wasn't about you, it was about me being scared. And now you're scared of paying rent on your own? She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? You didn't contact me until you realized I'd transferred the lease and canceled your card. The practical issues just made me realize how much I depend on you, she argued. How much I need you. I don't want to be needed. I want to be chosen. I stood up, and you chose your parents' approval over me. Ryan, Caroline interjected. People make mistakes. Natalie made a mistake. We made a mistake. Surely that deserves forgiveness? I looked at them all, this family unit closing ranks to fix the problem they'd created, and I felt nothing. That icy clarity was still there, protecting me. I wish you all the best, I said, turning to leave. Wait, Natalie stood up, drawing glances from other cafe patrons. I'll do anything. I'll move into your new place. I'll pay my own way. I'll cut off my parents if that's what it takes. Her parents looked alarmed at this suggestion, which told me everything I needed to know about how genuine their change of heart was. It's not about any of that, I told her. It's about the fact that you showed me who you really are. Someone who values status and other people's opinions over loyalty and love. I believe you now. I walked out, ignoring her calls behind me. That was 6 months ago. I haven't spoken to Natalie since, though she still texts occasionally. Her parents sent me an expensive bottle of scotch with a note of apology, which I donated to Mark's birthday party. The Riverside development I designed opened last month to positive reviews. My firm made me a junior partner as a result, with a healthy raise. I bought a condo in the building, small, but mine. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I remember how easily she wavered, how quickly she accepted her parents' assessment of my worth. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal. The right person won't need to be convinced that you're enough. They'll know it, and they'll defend that knowledge against anyone, even their own family. I'm still looking for that person, but at least now I know what I'm looking for. And what I'm not willing to accept. My fiancée wrote in her bridesmaids chat, "I'll say yes for now, but everyone knows I'll leave him eventually." She didn't notice I was in the thread. I just replied, "Make eventually today." Then I forwarded it to her parents who were paying for the wedding. It's funny how the universe works. You can spend years building something, laying every brick with care, and then discover the whole foundation is rotten because of one single misplaced text message. For me, that discovery came on a Tuesday night, a month before my wedding, in a group chat called Bride Tribe. Let me set the scene. I run a business that designs and installs custom home theaters and smart home systems. I like clean lines, good wiring, and things that work the way they're supposed to. My fiancée, Jessica, was supposed to be the final perfect component in the system of my life. Her parents, David and Mary, were footing the bill for our massive 6-figure wedding. They were wealthy, old money types who saw this wedding not as a marriage, but as a merger, a social event to cap off their daughter's perfect, privileged life. I liked David and Mary. They were good, decent people who had welcomed me into their family. They were proud of my business, proud of the fact that I'd built something on my own. They were also footing the entire bill for this wedding, a fact they reminded me of with a gentle but constant pressure. Their only daughter was getting married, and they wanted it to be the event of the year. Jessica loved every second of it. She loved the dress fittings, the cake tastings, the endless meetings with the wedding planner. She loved being the center of attention. I was happy to let her have the spotlight. I was marrying her, not the wedding. So, about the group chat. A few months ago, Jessica's maid of honor, a girl named Lauren who I couldn't stand, created a group chat for the bridesmaids. It was for planning the bachelorette party, the bridal shower, all of it. For some reason, when Lauren was adding the bridesmaids to the chat, she must have mistyped a number. Instead of adding one of the bridesmaids, she had accidentally added me. My number was just 1 digit off from one of the other girls. It was a 1 in a million mistake. For months, I was a silent ghost in their chat. I'd get the notifications, hundreds of them a day, but I had the chat muted. I never looked at it. It was their space, full of talk about dresses and drama I had no interest in. I figured I'd just leave the group after the wedding. But on that Tuesday night, a single notification popped up on my phone's locked screen. A preview of a message that made my blood run cold. It was from Jessica. "He just proposed the most ridiculously expensive honeymoon. I'll say yes for now, but everyone knows I'll leave him eventually." I stared at the screen, the words not quite making sense. It had to be a joke, right? Some weird, cynical bridal humor I wasn't supposed to see. I unlocked my phone and opened the chat for the first time. I scrolled up, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm in my chest. And there it was. Not just one message, but months of them. A secret. Second life my fiancé was living right under my nose. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? You could still call it off. And give up this wedding? Are you insane? My parents would kill me. Besides, it's not forever, it's just for now." Another bridesmaid named Olivia, "But you don't love him. Love is a strong word. He's stable, he's reliable, he's comfortable. It's a good starter marriage. I'll give it a few years, let him pay off my student loans, and then I'll move on to someone more exciting. What about the house? You know he's planning on buying one after the wedding. Even better, a good divorce settlement will be the perfect down payment on a place of my own. I scrolled and scrolled through dozens, hundreds of messages. It was all there. A calculated, cold-blooded plan to use me, to use our marriage as a financial stepping stone. She was marrying me for the wedding, for the stability, and for the eventual divorce settlement. She was laughing about it with her friends, mocking my love for her, my commitment, my future plans. The woman I was about to promise my life to was a parasite, and her friends were her willing accomplices. I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound and chilling sense of detachment, as if I were a surgeon looking at a cancerous tumor on an X-ray. The diagnosis was clear. The only option was to cut it out completely and cleanly. I scrolled back down to her most recent message, the one about the honeymoon. Her friends were already replying with laughing emojis and encouraging comments. My fingers moved across the keyboard, my mind clear and sharp. I typed a single, simple reply into the chat, the first and only message I would ever send to the bride tribe. Make eventually today. Then I took a screenshot of the entire conversation, a long, scrolling record of her betrayal. I attached it to an email. I addressed it to two people, David and Mary, her parents. The people who were paying for this fraudulent wedding. The subject line was simple, a change of plans. I hit send. And then I started to pack. Update 1. The silence after I sent that message was the most profound I have ever experienced. It was the silence of a bomb having been dropped, the moment before the shockwave hits. For about 5 minutes, nothing happened. The group chat was quiet. My phone was quiet. Then the chaos began. The first reply in the group chat was from Lauren, the maid of honor. Who is this? Is this a joke? Then another bridesmaid. OMG, is that his number? How is he in this chat? Then a frantic series of messages from Jessica. Mark, what are you talking about? How did you see that? You're not in this group. This is a huge misunderstanding. We were just joking around. Mark, call me right now. My phone started ringing. It was her. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again and again. While it was ringing, I got a new notification, an email reply from her father, David. It was one word. Unacceptable. A minute later, my phone rang again. This time it was David. I answered. His voice was low and tight, like a wire stretched to its breaking point. I'm looking at an email from you, Mark, he said. Tell me this isn't real. I'm afraid it is, David, I said, my voice calm. I was accidentally added to their group chat months ago. I never looked at it until tonight. What you're reading is just a small sample. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear a woman's voice in the background, muffled and distraught. It was Mary. I'm on my way over, David said and hung up. While I waited for him, I continued my work. I went through our apartment, a place I had moved into a year ago, but which was leased in both our names, and I started to pack my things, not hers, mine, my clothes, my books, my work equipment. I was a surgeon, excising myself from a diseased body. Jessica was still calling, her calls now interspersed with frantic, pleading texts. Please, baby, just talk to me. It's not what it looks like. I love you. You know I love you. My friends are terrible. They were just egging me on. I didn't mean any of it. The lies were so desperate, so transparent. It was almost pathetic. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was just terrified of the consequences. David arrived 20 minutes later. He looked like he had aged 10 years since I had last seen him. He walked into the apartment, looked at the half-packed boxes, and just shook his head. I've already spoken to the wedding planner, he said, his voice heavy. We're canceling everything. We'll lose the deposits, but I don't care. I will not pay for a fraud. We sat in silence for a few minutes. I'm sorry, Mark, he finally said. I had no idea. We raised her to be better than this. I thought she was, I said. He told me he had called Jessica and told her to be at their house in an hour for a family meeting. He asked me if I would come. He said he understood if I didn't want to, but that he felt I deserved to be there, to face her with them. I agreed. The drive to their house was surreal. Jessica was still sending me a constant stream of texts, each one more desperate than the last. She was now blaming Lauren, claiming her friend had stolen her phone and sent the messages as a cruel prank. When I walked into their house, the scene was tense and quiet. Jessica was sitting on the couch, her face pale and tear-stained. Mary was on the other side of the room, her expression a mask of cold, controlled fury. Lauren, the maid of honor, was there too, apparently summoned to answer for her part in the deception. Jessica jumped up when she saw me. "Mark, thank God, tell them this is all a misunderstanding." I didn't even look at her. I looked at David. He was holding a printout of the email I had sent him, the screenshots of the chat laid out like evidence in a courtroom. "Jessica," David said, his voice booming through the silent house. "I have 2 questions for you. Did you write these messages? And do you love this man?" She looked at me, then at her father, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. We were just joking," she stammered. "It was just girl talk." "That is not what I asked," David's voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Did you write these messages?" She finally broke. A sob escaped her lips. "Yes," she whispered. "And do you love him?" She just stood there, silent, the tears streaming down her face. The silence was her answer. Mary, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke, her voice shaking with rage. "Get out," she said, looking at Lauren. "Get out of my house. And you," she said, turning to Jessica, "pack a bag. You are no longer welcome here. You have humiliated this family in a way I never thought possible." Update 2. The explosion I had set off was not a single contained blast. It was a cluster bomb, sending shrapnel flying in every direction, tearing through the carefully curated world of my ex-fiancée and her family. The scene at her parents' house was just the beginning. After Mary kicked her out, Jessica had a full-blown meltdown. She refused to leave, screaming that it was her home, that they couldn't do this to her. It was Lauren, the now ex-maid of honor, who finally managed to get her out of the house. The wedding, of course, was canceled. But David and Mary did something I never expected. The following day, they sent out an email to every single person on the guest list. It was a formal, brutally honest announcement. "It is with the deepest regret that we announce the cancellation of the wedding between our daughter, Jessica, and Mark. This decision has been made due to the discovery of a profound and unforgivable betrayal on our daughter's part. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. We also wish to extend our deepest, most sincere apologies to Mark, a man who has shown our family nothing but kindness and respect, and who deserved so much better than the deceit he was shown." They didn't just cancel the wedding, they publicly disowned their daughter's actions and exonerated me completely. They chose integrity over saving face. It was an act of character I never would have expected, and it cemented my respect for them, even as I was extricating myself from their family. The financial fallout was swift. David was true to his word. He and his lawyers went through every vendor contract with a fine-tooth comb. They managed to recoup some of the deposits, but the losses were still substantial. As for me, I was in the clear. I hadn't spent a dime on the wedding itself. The apartment, however, was another matter. The lease was in both our names. I had no intention of living there, a place now tainted with the memory of her lies. I also had no intention of making it easy for her. I moved the rest of my things out and into a new apartment across town the day after our breakup. Then I did something my lawyer advised against, but which felt deeply, primally necessary. I went to the apartment one last time. Jessica was there, packing her things, her face a mess of tears and rage. She started screaming at me the moment I walked in, blaming me for ruining her life. I didn't say a word. I just walked into the kitchen, took a can of black spray paint from a bag, and painted a single large X on every single wall of the apartment. On the living room wall, I wrote the words that had started it all. "It's just for now." Then I walked out, leaving her standing in the ruins of our shared life. I immediately called the landlord, explained that my ex-fiancée and I had broken up, and that I would not be contesting the loss of our security deposit due to the redecorating. I gave him her number and told him she was now his sole point of contact. Jessica, I learned later, had to pay not only to have the entire apartment repainted, but also had to cover the remaining months of the lease herself, as I had made it clear I would not be contributing another cent. Her life, in the months that followed, was a slow, painful unraveling. Kicked out by her parents, she was forced to move in with Lauren. That arrangement lasted less than a month. The two of them, stripped of the wedding that had been the center of their social lives, apparently turned on each other with a vengeance. She had to get a job, a real one, for the first time in her adult life. She was working as a hostess at a restaurant, a humbling, and for her, humiliating fall from grace. Her parents, while still paying for some of her bills, had effectively cut her out of their lives. They were ashamed of her, and they didn't bother to hide it. Final update. It's been a year. I'm sitting in the living room of the house I just bought. A beautiful place with a big yard and a workshop where I can finally build the furniture I've always dreamed of making. My business is thriving. My life is quiet, stable, and entirely my own. I've maintained a cordial relationship with David and Mary. We've had dinner a few times. They are still deeply ashamed of what their daughter did, and they have treated me with a kindness and respect that is almost heartbreaking. They see me, I think, as the son they wish they had had. A few months ago, David called me. He told me they were selling their large family home and downsizing. The scandal, he admitted, had taken a toll on their social lives and they just wanted a fresh start. He asked if I would be interested in buying some of their furniture, as he knew I was still furnishing my new house. I went over to their house the following weekend. It was a sad, hollowed-out place, full of boxes and memories. As David was showing me a beautiful antique desk, Mary came into the room. She told me Jessica was there, in her old bedroom, packing up the last of her childhood things. She asked if I would be willing to just see her. For a moment, I didn't want to, but I saw the pleading in Mary's eyes, and I agreed. I walked up the stairs and knocked on the door of her old room. She opened it. The confident, radiant woman I had almost married was gone. She was thin, pale, and her eyes were empty. "Mark," she whispered. We just stood there for a moment, two strangers who had once promised each other forever. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "For everything." It was the first time I had ever heard her say those words without a hint of manipulation, without any agenda other than the simple, painful truth. I just nodded. "I know," I said. And that was it. There was no grand confrontation, no final, satisfying speech, just a quiet, sad acknowledgement of the ruins she had made of her own life. My girlfriend announced at our friend's engagement party, "Don't worry, I won't let him propose. I could do so much better." Then she detailed my inadequacies while everyone listened uncomfortably. I said nothing and left early. When she came home looking for a fight, she found empty closets and a note from her landlord about the lease that had always been only in my name. This morning, 74 desperate missed calls. First post, not using a throwaway because she doesn't know my Reddit username, and I honestly don't care if she finds this now. Last Saturday night changed everything. My girlfriend Amanda, 29, and I, 31, were at my best friend Mike's engagement party. We've been together 3 years, living in her apartment for 2. I say her apartment because that's what everyone thought. More on that later. The party was at Mike's parents' backyard. About 30 people, string lights, champagne towers, the works. Everyone dressed up, celebrating Mike and his fiancée Emma. I've known Mike since college, and Emma had quickly become one of my favorite people. They're solid, the kind of couple that makes you believe in partnerships. I was talking with some college friends when I noticed a small crowd forming around Amanda. She'd been drinking steadily since we arrived, and her voice carries when she's tipsy. I caught the tail end of whatever story she was telling as the group erupted in laughter. Emma's sister pulled me into their circle. "Amanda was just telling us about your disastrous camping trip last summer," she explained. The camping trip hadn't been disastrous. At least not in my memory. We'd forgotten the air mattress pump and had to sleep on the ground. Annoying, but hardly catastrophic. And he just lay there snoring while I was basically sleeping on rocks. Amanda was saying, rolling her eyes dramatically. "That's Alex, though. Mister, it's fine when it's clearly not fine." I smiled tightly. Amanda had been increasingly critical lately, but usually in private. This public performance was new. "When are you two getting engaged?" someone asked, gesturing between us. "You've been together almost as long as Mike and Emma, right?" The question hung there. Before I could respond with our standard "we're in no rush" line, Amanda snorted into her champagne. "Don't worry, I won't let him propose," she said loudly. "I could do so much better." The circle went quiet. "Come on," she continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "Alex is," she gestured vaguely at me. "He's fine for now. Stable job, decent cook. But long-term, marriage material? Please." She leaned in conspiratorially, but her whisper carried clearly. "He's so unambitious it's painful. 3 years at the same position, no promotion, his salary's hit its ceiling, and he's so boring. Wants to stay in most weekends, watch documentaries." I stood frozen as she listed my inadequacies to our friends. Plus his family is weird. His mom calls him like twice a week. She shuddered dramatically. "Could you imagine those people as in-laws?" The group looked mortified. Mike caught my eye from across the yard, clearly sensing something was wrong. "Anyway," Amanda concluded, sipping her champagne, "I'm keeping my options open. Jason from marketing has been texting me, and he's on track for regional manager." That was news to me. Emma's sister touched my arm gently. "Alex?" I just smiled, placed my still full drink on the nearest table, and said, "I should get some air." I walked out through the side gate, got in my car, and drove to our apartment. No scene, no confrontation, just a strategic exit. You see, Amanda wasn't the only one keeping options open. 3 months ago, I'd overheard her on the phone with her sister discussing her exit timeline from our relationship. "Just waiting for bonus season," she'd said. "No point leaving money on the table." That night, I'd done some research, discovered something interesting. Despite living there for 3 years, despite everyone referring to it as Amanda's place, the lease had always been solely in my name. She'd moved into my apartment originally, but somehow over time, the narrative had shifted. I'd signed the original lease, had it renewed twice, and paid every rent check from my account. Legally, it was unquestionably my apartment. Instead of confronting her then, I'd started making arrangements quietly. Secured a new place, paid the deposit, set up mail forwarding. Documented which furniture was mine. Most of it, Amanda preferred spending on clothes and vacations to investing in boring stuff like couches. Back at the apartment, I packed methodically. My clothes, important documents, irreplaceable items. 3 suitcases loaded into my car. I'd come back for the furniture later. Then I called our landlord, Stanley, explained I'd be breaking the lease early, as permitted in Clause 16B, the early termination option I'd specifically negotiated. As the sole leaseholder, I had this right. I'd pay the 2-month penalty, of course. "Can you do me a favor, Stanley? When Amanda gets home tonight, she'll be confused. Could you leave her a note clarifying the lease situation? She seems to have misunderstood who's been renting the apartment." Stanley agreed, somewhat perplexed but professional. I drove to my new place, a 1-bedroom I'd rented 3 weeks earlier, already partially furnished with deliveries I'd scheduled for the future. Future was now. Amanda arrived home from the party at 1:38 a.m. I know because that's when the calls started. First confused, then angry, then panicked. I didn't answer. Her texts escalated from "where did you go?" to "where is all your stuff?" to "what the fuck is this lease notice?" impressively quickly. By morning, I had 74 missed calls and 31 texts. I blocked her number after cataloging them all. Documentation matters. 2 days later, Mike called. "Dude, what happened? Amanda's telling everyone you abandoned her, left her homeless." I explained the situation calmly. The years of subtle put-downs. The overheard exit strategy. The final public humiliation. The lease facts. "Shit," Mike said finally. "That's actually pretty badass how you handled it. Clean break, no drama." "On my side, anyway," I said. "How's Emma's party recovery going?" "The party was fine, but get this. Amanda showed up at our place yesterday, hysterical, demanding I tell her where you've moved." "What did you say?" "That I didn't know, which is true. Then Emma told her to leave before she called the police. Emma's protective of you, man. Good people, those two." Amanda found my workplace next. Caused a scene in the lobby. Security escorted her out and my boss called me in for a talk. I showed him the text messages, played a choice voicemail. He nodded grimly. "Take a few personal days. We'll instruct reception not to allow her up." That was 5 days ago. Since then, Amanda has 1. Created fake social media accounts to message me, blocked. 2. Contacted my mother, who already disliked her, and simply said, "I trust my son's decisions." 3. Shown up at my favorite coffee shop repeatedly. "I'm trying new coffee shops." 4. Told mutual friends I cheated on her, patently false. I left a tearful apology on my work voicemail, saved for documentation. 6. Emailed that she's keeping the apartment, factually impossible. Yesterday she somehow got my new email, probably from a mutual acquaintance, and sent a long message explaining that she was just joking at the party, that Jason means nothing, that I've overreacted dramatically to harmless comments. Said she's always seen a future with me, and I've ruined everything over nothing. I replied with a single attachment, audio of her exit timeline conversation that I'd recorded 3 months ago. Nothing else in the body of the email. Probably unnecessary, but I wanted her to understand this wasn't an impulsive decision. That was 26 hours ago. No response yet. I'm settling into my new place. Had lunch with Mike and Emma yesterday. They're firmly in my corner. Started therapy, which has been insightful. Apparently, I've been ignoring red flags because they appeared gradually over time. The strangest part? I feel relieved. 3 years with someone who saw me as a placeholder, a for now option, while she waited for something better. Now I'm the one who's found something better. Self-respect. Update 10 days later. Thanks for all the comments and support. Several developments worth sharing. The lease situation resolved exactly as expected. Stanley confirmed Amanda moved out after realizing she had zero legal claim to the apartment. She tried arguing that her emotional equity and the fact that our friends knew it as her place somehow translated to legal rights. Stanley, to his credit, simply pointed to my signature on every document. My mother called to tell me Amanda showed up at my parents' house, 2 hours away, unannounced. Mom invited her in, listened politely to her tearful explanation, then said, "My son doesn't want contact with you. Please respect that, or the next conversation will be with law enforcement." Mom later texted, "Never liked her. Your father agrees." Parents with boundaries are a gift. The most surprising development. I received an email from Jason, yes, the marketing guy Amanda mentioned. Turns out he had no idea she was in a relationship. They'd been talking for weeks, and she'd presented herself as single. He apologized for his unwitting role in the situation and sent screenshots of their conversations as proof. I thanked him for his honesty and wished him well. Work has been understanding. Security protocols remain in place, but Amanda seems to have stopped trying there after being escorted out twice more. Several mutual friends have reached out after hearing her side to get mine. Most have been supportive once they learn the full story. The few who've taken her side? I consider it a convenient filtering mechanism for relationships not worth maintaining. For those who asked about the furniture, I hired movers during a time I knew Amanda would be at work. They were in and out in 90 minutes with everything that was mine. Left behind anything I'd given her as gifts and anything purchased jointly. Clean break. I've started seeing a therapist regularly. She's helping me recognize patterns I missed. How Amanda subtly isolated me from certain friends. How her jokes at my expense normalized public criticism. How she reframed the apartment as hers despite all evidence to the contrary. The most common question in my DMs, did you plan this all along? Not initially. After overhearing her exit timeline, I started documenting and making contingency plans, but I wasn't planning to execute them immediately. The engagement party was simply the catalyst that showed me who she really was, not just to me, but to everyone who mattered. Edit woke up to hundreds of new comments. Quick responses to frequent questions. Yes, recording the exit timeline conversation was legal in my state. One-party consent. No, I don't feel guilty about the homelessness accusations. Amanda makes good money, has family in the area, and according to mutual friends, moved in with her sister immediately. She was never at risk of actual homelessness. Several people have suggested I was too calm, and this must be fake. When someone shows you who they are, believing them the first time saves a lot of drama. I'd already mourned the relationship during those 3 months of planning. By the time the engagement party happened, I was emotionally checked out, just waiting for confirmation that I wasn't overreacting. She provided that confirmation in front of 30 witnesses. To clarify the timeline, I signed the new lease 3 weeks before the party, but had been apartment hunting for about 2 months. The furniture deliveries were scheduled with flexible dates, which I adjusted once I moved out. For those concerned about the long term, I'm doing well. Better than expected. Started hiking on weekends, something Amanda always called pointlessly walking in dirt. Reconnected with friends I'd seen less during the relationship. Even went on a casual coffee date yesterday. Nothing serious, just remembering what normal, respectful interaction feels like. Final thought. Someone messaged asking if 3 years was too much to throw away over one incident. It wasn't one incident, it was a pattern revealed in one unmistakable moment. Sometimes clarity comes in a whisper, sometimes in a public announcement at your best friend's engagement party. Either way, when it comes, listen. My fiancé texted, "Need to postpone the wedding, family emergency." I said, "Understood." The next day, I saw photos of her on vacation with her ex. When confronted, she said, "I just needed closure. Don't be insecure." So I canceled everything, returned the ring, and posted the photos online, tagging her entire family. Now she's frantically calling me. "My family disowned me. I need a place to live." Sometimes the most important lessons come wrapped in the most painful packages. 2 months ago, I was planning a wedding. Today, I'm rebuilding my life. It's amazing how quickly everything can change with a single text message. I'm 37, own a specialized metal fabrication shop. Started with just a workshop in my garage 10 years ago, now operating a full production facility with 12 employees. Not bragging, just setting the stage. I met Rachel, 34, 3 years ago through mutual friends. She worked as a financial advisor at a regional investment firm. Smart, ambitious, beautiful. The kind of woman who lights up a room when she walks in. Our relationship moved quickly. We clicked on every level. I proposed after 18 months and she said yes immediately, tears streaming down her face. We set the date for May 15th, last Saturday actually. Had everything planned, venue at Lakeside Gardens, custom rings, honeymoon in Bali. I'd put down deposits totaling nearly $12,000, but I'd structured most of them with contingency clauses, something I learned from my business dealings. Rachel pushed for a dream wedding, and since I could afford it, I was happy to make it happen. But I wasn't about to throw money away without protections. 2 months before the wedding, Rachel started acting distant. Always on her phone, being secretive, working late. Classic red flags, but I trusted her completely. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, she'd blame wedding stress or work pressure. I gave her space, picked up more of the planning responsibilities. Looking back, I can see I was making excuses for her behavior, refusing to see what was right in front of me. Then came the text that changed everything. It was Wednesday, 3 weeks before the wedding. "Rachel, need to postpone the wedding. Family emergency. My aunt in Phoenix is in the hospital. Going there now. Will call when I can." I immediately responded, "Understood. Let me know if you need anything." I was concerned, of course. She'd mentioned this aunt a few times, her mother's sister who helped raise her after her father left. I called her mother to see if she needed anything, only to discover she knew nothing about any emergency. She was confused, said there was no aunt in Phoenix. Rachel was an only child and both her parents were only children as well. That's when the first wave of dread hit me. I called Rachel, straight to voicemail, texted, no response. I waited, giving her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there was some explanation. Maybe her mother was confused. Maybe I had misunderstood something. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from Instagram. A mutual friend had tagged Rachel in photos. My stomach dropped as I opened the app. There she was, smiling on a beach in Cancun. No hospital, no sick aunt, and she wasn't alone. The man with his arm around her was vaguely familiar. It took me a moment to place him. Mark, her ex-boyfriend from before we met. The one she claimed was ancient history and completely toxic. I stared at those photos for what felt like hours. The timestamps showed they'd been posted just hours after she texted me about her family emergency. There were multiple photos. Them at dinner, on a boat, walking on the beach. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was a planned vacation. I didn't call or text her. What would be the point? Instead, I took screenshots of everything and then did something that went against every instinct I had. I waited. I wanted to see how far she would take this lie. 3 days later, she called. "Hey babe, finally got a minute to call. It's been crazy here." She launched into an elaborate story about her aunt's condition, hospital complications, family drama. I listened silently, giving her enough rope to hang herself with. "How's the weather in Phoenix?" I finally asked when she paused for breath. "Hot. You know how it is here in the desert." And how was Cancun? The water looked beautiful in those pictures with Mark. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? Don't. You're on Instagram with your ex in Cancun. Your mother has no idea what you're talking about regarding an aunt in Phoenix. You don't have an aunt in Phoenix. You don't have any aunts at all. Another long pause. I can explain. I'm sure you can. I'll be home tonight. We can talk then. When I got home, Rachel was waiting. She'd been crying, or at least trying to make it look that way. She started with apologies, then quickly pivoted to justifications. I just needed closure with Mark before getting married. We ended things so abruptly, and I've been having dreams about him. It doesn't mean anything. You lied about a family emergency and went on vacation with your ex 3 weeks before our wedding. I kept my voice level. That means something. Don't be so insecure, she said, her tone shifting from contrite to defensive. This is exactly why I couldn't tell you the truth. You wouldn't understand. Mark and I needed to say a proper goodbye. It was closure, that's all. Did this closure involve sharing a hotel room? She flushed. That's not fair. You're making this into something it's not. You're right about one thing, I said. I don't understand. I don't understand how you could lie to me, betray my trust, and then stand here acting like I'm the one with the problem. It was 3 days. Are you really going to throw away our entire relationship over this? The wedding is in less than 3 weeks. Everything is paid for. And there it was. Not concern about our relationship or my feelings, but about the money already spent. The wedding is off, I said quietly. You can stay here tonight if you need to, but I want you out by tomorrow. You can't be serious. Where am I supposed to go? I gave up my apartment when I moved in here. That sounds like a problem you should discuss with Mark. Maybe he can help you find closure on your housing situation too. She started crying again. Real tears this time. Begging, pleading, promising it would never happen again. I almost wavered. Almost. But then I remembered those photos. Her smiling, carefree, while I was at home worried about her fictional aunt. I'll sleep in the guest room. You have until tomorrow evening. The next day, while Rachel was out, presumably looking for a place to stay, I got to work. First, I called the wedding venue and every vendor, explaining the situation. To my surprise, most were understanding. You're not the first, believe me, the venue manager said. Our contract allows for 75% refund with proof of extenuating circumstances. Infidelity qualifies. I thanked her and provided the evidence she needed. Most other vendors had similar policies. They'd rather return most of the money than deal with a bitter client or negative reviews. In total, I was able to recover about $9,000 of the $12,000 I'd put down. The remaining $3,000 was a small price to pay for discovering someone's true character before legally binding myself to them. Next, I called Rachel's parents. We'd always gotten along well, and they deserved to know why the wedding they'd been looking forward to was suddenly canceled. I kept it simple and factual, without embellishment. Her father was silent for a long moment after I finished. "I'm sorry, son," he finally said. "You deserved better than this." Her mother was more emotional, alternating between apologizing for her daughter's behavior and expressing disbelief. "We raised her better than this," she kept saying. I packed Rachel's things neatly in suitcases and boxes. Not angrily, not throwing things around, methodically, like closing down a failed business venture. Because that's what this was, a failed investment of my time, money, and heart. When she returned that evening, the boxes were waiting by the door. I handed her the engagement ring box. The ring was my grandmother's. I'd like it back. She stared at the box, then at me. "Keep it," she said, dropping it onto the table. "It's not like I can wear it anymore anyway. I've called the wedding vendors. Everything's been canceled." She nodded, seeming resigned. Then, as if remembering something important, "What about the deposits? That's a lot of money." "What about them?" "Well, we should split whatever you can get refunded. I paid for the photographer and the flowers." I almost laughed. "You paid $2,400. I paid the rest, and you're the one who cheated and lied. So no, we won't be splitting anything. I've already recovered most of my money anyway." "That's not fair. I'm going to be homeless because of you." "You're going to be homeless because you chose to lie and cheat 3 weeks before our wedding. Actions have consequences, Rachel." She left with her things, hurling insults and threats as she went. I changed the locks that night, blocked her number, and poured myself 2 fingers of the whiskey I'd been saving for the wedding toast. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next day, I received a cease and desist letter from an attorney claiming I had maliciously defamed Rachel by spreading falsehoods about her character to her parents and our vendors. It was a laughable legal threat, but it made one thing clear. Rachel wasn't taking responsibility for anything. That's when I decided the gloves were coming off. I hadn't posted anything about our breakup on social media. I'm a private person by nature, and airing dirty laundry online isn't my style. But Rachel had crossed a line, and sometimes the only language people understand is public consequences. I created a simple post, a screenshot of her family emergency text alongside the time-stamped photos of her in Cancun with her ex. No angry caption, no name-calling, just the evidence presented side by side with the caption, "Why the wedding is canceled. Wish I'd known sooner. Thankfully, got most deposits back." Then I tagged her, and her parents, and our mutual friends, and, because I was feeling particularly thorough, her colleagues at the investment firm where trust and ethics were fundamental to client relationships. It went about as viral as a post from a regular guy with a few hundred followers could go. Friends shared it. Their friends shared it. Within 24 hours, it had spread through our entire social circle and beyond. Rachel's response was immediate and furious. Calls from blocked numbers, emails, messages through mutual friends. How could I do this to her? Did I realize I was ruining her life, her career? I didn't respond to any of it. A week passed. I focused on work, spent time with friends who had my back, started picking up the pieces. Then Rachel's mother called. "I thought you should know," she said, her voice tight. "We've told Rachel she is not welcome in our home right now. Her father and we need time. What she did to you, the lies she told us, it's not how we raised her." I thanked her for calling, but didn't comment further. Their relationship with their daughter wasn't my concern anymore. 3 days later, Rachel showed up at my door. She looked terrible. Eyes red, hair unwashed, wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in on social media the day before. "My parents won't speak to me," she said before I could close the door. My roommate options all fell through. Mark is back with his ex. I got placed on administrative leave at work pending an ethics review. I have nowhere to go. I'm sorry to hear that. I wasn't, really, but some habits die hard. Can I stay here, just for a few weeks until I figure things out? I still have some things here anyway. No, you can't. And no, you don't. Everything you left is in a storage unit. I handed her a piece of paper with the details. Paid through the end of the month. Her expression hardened. You did this to me. You ruined my life because your ego couldn't handle that I needed closure with an ex. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but pity. No, Rachel, you did this to yourself. You lied, you cheated, you tried to manipulate me and then legally threaten me. Now you're facing the consequences of those choices. That's not about my ego, it's about basic human decency. I made one mistake. You made dozens of choices, each one an opportunity to do the right thing. You chose wrong every time. That's not a mistake, that's a character flaw. I closed the door and didn't look back. It's been 2 months now. The wedding date has come and gone. I heard through mutual friends that Rachel moved back to her hometown, 4 states away. Her social media has gone dark. According to her mother, with whom I still occasionally speak, she's staying with a distant cousin and working at an insurance call center while trying to find herself. As for me, I'm doing better than expected. I was able to recover most of the deposits, and Rachel's parents actually reached out to compensate me for the rest. "It's the least we can do," her father said. "We raised her better than this." I initially declined, but he insisted. "It's not about the money," he told me. "It's about accountability." Last week I met with the venue manager who had been so understanding. They had a corporate client looking for a last-minute location for a charity gala. Would I be willing to transfer the remainder of my deposit? The date worked, and the cause was good. A children's hospital would benefit, and I'd get a tax write-off. It felt like closing a circle somehow. The engagement ring sits in my safe. Maybe someday it will find its way onto the right hand. My grandmother was married for 62 years, and she always said the secret was choosing someone whose character matched their promises. I think I understand what she meant now better than ever. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the support. To answer some common questions, yes, the cease and desist letter was real, but it was basically a scare tactic. My attorney, who happens to be my best friend's brother, wrote a response that apparently made her lawyer back down immediately. No, I'm not worried about defamation claims. Truth is an absolute defense, and I have the receipts. Several people have asked if I had any warning signs before this. Looking back, yes, she was always very image-conscious, cared deeply about how others perceived her. She maintained contact with several exes, which she justified as being mature. And there were a few girls' weekends where details seemed vague afterward. For those suggesting I was too harsh by posting the evidence publicly, maybe. But when someone lies to you, cheats on you, then tries to legally threaten you for telling the truth, the right to privacy goes out the window. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. To the person who asked if I recovered financially, yes. Between vendor refunds and her parents' insistence on covering the remaining costs, I didn't lose a dime. I would have been fine either way. My business is successful enough that I could absorb the loss, but it was less about the money and more about the principle. Update, 3 months later. Life continues to move forward. The metal fabrication business is doing well. Just landed a contract with an aerospace supplier that will keep us busy through the end of the year. I've gone on a few casual dates, nothing serious yet. I'm taking my time. Rachel reached out once more through a mutual friend, asking if we could talk about things civilly. I declined. Some chapters are better left closed. Her parents invited me to dinner last month. I was hesitant but decided to go. They're good people caught in an unfortunate situation. Her father pulled me aside afterward and said something that stuck with me. Sometimes the people we raise disappoint us, but that doesn't mean we were wrong to love them. It just means they have their own path to walk. I think that applies to romantic relationships too. I don't regret loving Rachel. I regret that she wasn't the person I thought she was. But that's life. We live, we learn, we rebuild. The wedding venue called again. The charity event was a success, and they wanted to thank me for the donation of the space. They sent a framed photo of the children who benefited from the fundraiser. It sits on my desk now, a reminder that even from difficult situations, something good can grow. If there's a lesson in all this, maybe it's simply that character matters more than anything else. A beautiful wedding lasts a day. Character lasts a lifetime. My fiancée texted, "Still love you, but I need to get closure with my ex before marriage." I replied, "Take your time." Then I called her parents and returned the ring. She found out when they asked her why she wasn't engaged anymore. I'm sitting here in my apartment, and it's quiet. For the first time in 3 years, it is completely, peacefully quiet. 3 weeks ago, this place was a staging ground for a wedding. Now, it's just my apartment again. It's better this way. A lot of you asked for the whole story after my first post, so here it is from the beginning. It all started on a Thursday morning. My fiancée Chloe and I were supposed to be doing a final walkthrough of our wedding venue that afternoon. We were 3 weeks out from the big day. Everything was paid for, non-refundable deposits everywhere. Her dress was ready, my suit was tailored, invitations had been sent, and RSVPs were in. We were, for all intents and purposes, locked in. I was in the middle of a conference call when my phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Chloe. I figured it was about the venue, maybe a reminder about the time. I was wrong. The text read, "Hey, I know this is bad timing, but I can't stop thinking about Mark. I feel like I need to see him and get real closure before we get married. It wouldn't be fair to you to walk down the aisle with any doubts. I still love you, but I need to do this for myself. I'm going to see him this weekend. Don't worry." I read it once, then a second time, then a third. It felt like the words were rearranging themselves on the screen. Closure. With her ex-boyfriend, Mark. The guy she dated for 5 years before me, the one she always described as intense and complicated. The guy whose name would occasionally pop up, leaving a weird tension in the room. 3 weeks before our wedding, she needed to go see him for closure. Something inside me didn't break. It didn't even crack. It just went cold. It was the kind of clarity you get when you're driving in heavy fog and it suddenly vanishes, revealing you're 2 feet from the edge of a cliff. All the little things from the past few months suddenly snapped into focus. Her being distant. The late-night texting she claimed was with her bridesmaids. The vague answers about her plans. I ended my conference call. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, just staring at the wall. I thought about the life we were supposed to build. I thought about the promises we'd made. And then I thought about that text message. It wasn't a request for permission. It was a notification. She had already decided. She was telling me, not asking me. She was putting her unresolved feelings for another man ahead of our commitment 3 weeks before we were supposed to make it legally binding. And in that moment, I realized I was not going to be the guy who waits at home, worrying, while his fiancée goes on a soul-searching trip with her ex. I was not going to be Plan B. I was not going to be a doormat. I picked up my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I typed my reply to her. Take your time. Then I put my phone on silent, opened my laptop, and got to work. The wedding wasn't just being postponed, it was being dismantled, effective immediately. My first call was not to my friends. It was not to my family. It was to Chloe's parents. Her father, David, answered. He's a decent guy, a bit formal, but he always seemed to like me. David, it's Alex, I said, keeping my voice calm and even. I'm sorry to bother you at work, but something serious has come up regarding the wedding. He immediately sounded concerned, asking if Chloe was okay. She's fine, I said. But she has just informed me that she is going to spend this weekend with her ex-boyfriend, Mark, to get closure before our wedding. She feels this is something she needs to do. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing. She what? She's gonna see Mark. She said she can't marry me with doubts. I'm not sure what will happen after her trip, but I cannot in good conscience move forward with a wedding under these circumstances. As of this moment, the engagement is off. More silence. I could hear his wife, Sarah, in the background asking what was wrong. I heard him mutter to her. Chloe went to see Mark. Then, back to me, his voice was different, colder. I see. Thank you for letting us know, Alex. I don't know what to say. There's nothing you need to say, I told him. I just felt you and Sarah had a right to know immediately. I have a couple of rings here I'd like to return to you as well. This is probably a good time to explain the rings. When we got engaged, Chloe was very insistent on the idea of us both having engagement rings. She called it a modern symbol of our equal commitment. She had a custom one made for me, a simple platinum band. It was her parents' gift to me, a welcome to the family gesture. I wasn't thrilled with the idea, as it's not really a tradition for men here, but it seemed to make her happy, so I went with it. Now that equal commitment felt like a joke. I can drop them off this evening, I continued. David just sounded defeated. Yes, that's fine. I'll be home after 6. The next series of calls were to the vendors. I started with the venue. I explained that the wedding was canceled. The woman on the phone was sympathetic but firm. The final payment made 2 weeks prior was non-refundable. That was a painful $20,000 pill to swallow. Same story with the caterer, the photographer, the band. Each call was a nail in the coffin of the $60,000 wedding we had planned. My parents had contributed a generous amount, but the bulk of it was my own savings. Money I had worked hard for, gone. I sent a mass email to everyone on our guest list with the subject line, "Wedding Cancellation." The body was short and to the point. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the wedding of Chloe and Alex scheduled for date has been canceled. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. I didn't offer any more explanation. Let the rumors fly. The truth was messier than any rumor they could invent. I spent the rest of the afternoon packing. Chloe had moved into my apartment about a year ago. She didn't have much furniture, but her clothes, shoes, and personal items had a way of expanding to fill every available space. I was methodical. I bought boxes from the store down the street. I packed every item of hers carefully. Her designer bags, her endless collection of makeup, the books she'd read halfway and left on the nightstand. I labeled each box neatly. Chloe, clothes. Chloe, bathroom. Chloe, books. By the time I was done, there was a neat stack of 22 boxes in the spare bedroom. The apartment already felt bigger. It felt like mine again. At 6:30, I drove to her parents' house. I had the 2 small ring boxes in my jacket pocket. Sarah, her mom, answered the door. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she'd been crying. David was standing behind her, looking grim. They invited me in, but I stayed on the doorstep. "I won't stay long," I said. "I just wanted to return these." I handed David the box with my ring. Then I handed him the box with the diamond ring I had spent 3 months of my salary on. The one Chloe had picked out herself. He took them without a word. Sarah finally spoke, her voice trembling. "We don't understand, Alex. Why would she do this now?" "That's a question you'll have to ask her," I said. "All I know is that she made a choice, and her choice was not me. I'm just accepting that." I wished them well and walked back to my car. As I drove away, I saw them standing in the doorway. 2 confused and heartbroken people, holding the remnants of a future their daughter had just thrown away. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a profound sense of emptiness. The cold, logical part of my brain had executed the plan perfectly. The human part was just starting to process the wreckage. When I got home, I ordered a pizza and opened my laptop. It was time to change some passwords. Update 1. It's been a week since my last post. A lot has happened. Thank you for all the comments and messages. It's strange to get support from strangers on the internet, but it honestly helped me feel less like I was going crazy. So, where we left off, I had canceled the wedding, informed Chloe's parents, and packed up her life into 22 boxes. All of this was done in the 12 hours after she sent me that text. She was, at this point, completely unaware of the hurricane she was about to walk into. She was off on her closure trip with Mark. The silence for the next 3 days was absolute. She didn't text, I didn't text. I just went about the business of untangling our lives. I called the travel agent and canceled our honeymoon to Greece. Lost another $5,000 on that. I went through all our shared accounts and subscriptions, methodically removing her name, changing passwords. I contacted the landlord and had her name officially removed from the lease agreement. She wasn't a legal tenant, just listed as an occupant, so it was a simple process. On Sunday evening, my phone finally buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Chloe's best friend and maid of honor, Jessica. "Alex, what is going on? Chloe's parents are freaking out and not making any sense. They said you called off the wedding? Is this some kind of joke?" I replied simply, "No joke. The wedding is off. You should probably ask Chloe why." Jessica's response came instantly. "She's not answering her phone. We're all worried. What did you do?" The sheer audacity of that question, "What did you do?" was almost funny. They immediately assumed I was the problem. I didn't bother to reply. The main event happened on Monday morning. I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message appeared. It was Chloe, and she sounded hysterical. "Alex, call me right now. My mom just called me, screaming. She said you gave my ring back? What is going on? Why would you do that without talking to me? This is insane. Call me." She must have just finished her weekend of closure and was hit with the news from her mother. Not from me. I was, after all, respecting her wishes. Then the texts started pouring in, a flood of them. "Why are you doing this? I told you I still loved you. My parents are acting like I committed a crime. You twisted everything. You had no right to cancel everything without even talking to me. Jessica told me you emailed the entire guest list. How could you humiliate me like that?" I read them all, one by one, feeling nothing but a distant sense of confirmation. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done. It was all about how my actions had affected her. The victim narrative was already being spun, and she was casting herself in the starring role. I let her spiral for a few hours. Then I sent my only reply. "You said you needed to get closure before you could marry me. I accept that. The engagement is over. Your belongings are packed in the spare room. Please let me know when you would like to arrange for them to be picked up. I would prefer if you had your father or a moving service handle it." The response was immediate and furious. She called me a monster, a coward, a psycho. She said I had taken her text the wrong way, that I was overreacting, that she had been planning to come home and talk everything through. She demanded to be let into the apartment to get her things. I replied, "The locks have been changed. Please arrange a time for pickup." This apparently was the final straw. Her messages devolved into pure rage. That's when her friends got involved. I started getting texts from Jessica and another bridesmaid, Lauren. They were a tag team of indignation. "You are being so controlling and manipulative," Jessica wrote. "She made one little mistake because she was stressed about the wedding and you destroy her life?" Lauren added her 2 cents. "Real men fight for their relationships. They don't just throw them away like trash. Chloe deserves better." A little mistake. That's what they were calling it. A planned trip to see an ex-boyfriend, a trip she lied about by omission for weeks, was a little mistake. I was starting to see the echo chamber she lived in. A world where her actions had no consequences and her feelings were the only thing that mattered. I blocked their numbers, all of them. My phone went quiet again. The next day, I got an email from her father, David. It was short and formal. He said he would come on Saturday with a moving truck to collect Chloe's things. He asked if Chloe could be present to make sure nothing was missed. I agreed, on the condition that she would not be allowed to wander through the apartment. She could stand in the entryway and direct her father. He agreed. The rest of the week was spent in a weird limbo. I went to work, came home to a half-empty apartment, and tried to process the fact that my life had completely changed in the span of a few days. The anger was starting to be replaced by a deep, hollow sadness. I had been planning a future with this person. I had believed in the life we were building, and it had all been a lie. I found out later from a mutual friend who felt guilty for not saying anything sooner that Chloe had been in contact with Mark for months. It wasn't a sudden crisis of doubt. It was a prolonged emotional affair that she had been hiding. The closure trip was supposed to be her final test. She was going to see if the fantasy of getting back with Mark was better than the reality of marrying me. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. She just never imagined that while she was gone, I would throw the whole cake in the trash. Saturday came. The moving truck pulled up right on time. David and his brother came to the door. Chloe was standing behind them on the sidewalk. She wouldn't look at me. Her face was puffy, and she was wearing sunglasses even though it was overcast. She looked smaller than I remembered. I propped the door open and stood in the hallway. "The boxes are in the spare room," I told David. 22 of them. Everything is packed. For the next hour, they carried boxes out of my apartment. Chloe stood in the entryway, pointing and directing. Her voice a strained whisper. She tried to make a few comments to me. "You didn't have to do this, Alex. We could have talked. This is cruel." I didn't respond. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching them erase the last traces of her from my home. When the last box was loaded, David came back to the door. He looked exhausted. "That's everything," he said. He hesitated, then looked me in the eye. "For what it's worth, son, I'm sorry." I just nodded. Chloe walked up behind him. She had taken her sunglasses off. Her eyes were full of a strange mix of anger and desperation. "Are you happy now?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You got what you wanted. You ruined everything." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since this all began. I didn't see the woman I had planned to marry. I saw a stranger. "I didn't ruin anything, Chloe," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I just cleaned up the mess you made." Then I closed the door. Update 2. It has now been a full month since what my friends have started calling the Great Cancellation. The dust is settling, but the fallout has been interesting. The quiet in my apartment is no longer eerie. It's peaceful. I'm rediscovering my own space, my own routines. It's amazing how much of yourself you can lose in a relationship without even realizing it. After the movers left with Chloe's 22 boxes of shame, I expected the drama to die down. I was wrong. The next phase was the smear campaign. Chloe, with the help of her loyal lieutenants, Jessica and Lauren, launched a full-scale assault on my character. It started on social media. Vague posts about surviving emotional abuse and escaping a toxic, controlling relationship. They never used my name, but the context was clear. Mutual friends started looking at me sideways. I got a few messages asking for my side of the story. At first, I ignored it. I'm not a fan of airing dirty laundry in public, but it escalated. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe was telling people I had a temper, that I was financially controlling, and that I had canceled the wedding in a fit of rage over a minor disagreement. She was painting herself as the victim who had been callously thrown out on the street. The closure trip with Mark was conveniently omitted from her version of events. The tipping point came when I got a call from my mother. She was distraught. One of her friends had heard from a friend of Sarah's, Chloe's mom, that I had been horrible to Chloe and that the breakup was all my fault. The lies were starting to affect my family, and that was a line I wouldn't let them cross. I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore, but I wasn't going to engage in a messy social media war. That's what she wanted. She wanted me to look angry and unhinged to prove her narrative right. My revenge, I decided, would be quiet, precise, and based on one thing she couldn't argue with: her own words. I took a screenshot of her original text message, the one where she announced her trip to see Mark for closure. I didn't post it publicly. That wasn't my style. Instead, I sent it to 3 key people. First, I sent it to Jessica's husband, a guy I was friendly with. I attached a simple message. "Hey man, I know you're hearing a lot of stuff right now. This is the minor disagreement that started everything. Just wanted you to have the facts." Second, I sent it to the best man from my side, who was friends with several guys in Chloe's extended circle. My message was similar, just so you have the real story when people ask. Third, and this was the masterstroke, I sent it to Sarah, Chloe's mother. My message to her was different. "Sarah, I have stayed silent while Chloe tells everyone a version of events that is not true. I will not engage in public drama, but I think you, as her mother, deserve to know the exact words that ended our engagement." This was her choice. My only choice was how to react to it. The effect was immediate and devastating. Jessica's husband, a no-nonsense type, was apparently furious that his wife was involved in spreading lies. I heard he had a very serious conversation with her about loyalty and honesty. Jessica went completely silent after that. No more texts, no more social media posts. The rumor mill among our mutual friends ground to a halt and then started turning in the other direction. The story of the text message spread like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone understood. My actions, the canceled wedding, the packed boxes, the changed locks, made perfect sense in this new context. I wasn't a villain. I was a guy who refused to be played for a fool. But the most significant fallout came from Chloe's own family. Sarah, faced with the undeniable proof of her daughter's betrayal in her own words, could no longer maintain the victim narrative. The dynamic in their house apparently shifted overnight. It was no longer about comforting poor, heartbroken Chloe. It became about confronting Chloe's terrible decision-making. And what about Mark? The catalyst for this whole disaster? I found out what happened there from a friend of a friend. Chloe's grand romantic reunion didn't go as planned. Mark was apparently flattered that she came to see him, and they had a great weekend reconnecting. But when she showed up on his doorstep a week later with 22 boxes, a canceled wedding, and a whole lot of drama, he panicked. He wasn't looking to pick up the pieces of her life. He was married. Yes. You read that right. Mark was married. It was something Chloe had conveniently forgotten to mention. He had apparently told her it was a mistake, and they were basically separated, a classic line that she chose to believe. His wife, however, did not see it that way. When she found out Chloe was planning to move into their guest room for a little while, she gave him an ultimatum. Chloe goes, or I go. He chose his wife. So, Chloe's escape plan, her grand test of fate, had imploded. She had torched her engagement for a man who was never actually available. She was left with nothing. No fiancé, no backup boyfriend, no apartment. She was 31 years old, living in her childhood bedroom, with her parents looking at her with a mixture of pity and profound disappointment. The financial reality also began to set in. Chloe had quit her job 2 months before the wedding, a mutual decision we made so she could focus on the final preparations, and then we would figure out her next career move after the honeymoon. She had no income. She had been living entirely off my support. Now, that was gone. She had a car payment and credit card bills that she had no way to pay. The desperate texts started again, this time to my parents. Apologies, regrets, pleas for them to talk to me. My mom called me, her voice sad. "She seems truly broken, Alex." "She's not broken, Mom," I told her. "She's just broke. There's a difference." I had one final piece of business to take care of. The $60,000 we lost on the wedding. My parents and I had agreed to split the loss, but it still stung. Then I had an idea. I called a lawyer and asked a simple question. We had a joint savings account that we had both contributed to for wedding expenses. After I paid the final vendor deposits, there was still about $10,000 left in it, money that was now legally half mine. However, Chloe, in the days between her return and getting her boxes, had drained the account completely. My lawyer sent a letter to her parents' address. It was a formal demand for the return of my $5,000 from the joint account, citing her withdrawal as an act of bad faith conversion of shared assets post-separation. It also included an itemized list of all the non-refundable wedding expenses, making it clear that while I wasn't legally pursuing her for half of the $60,000, the moral debt was hers to carry. The check for $5,000 arrived a week later, sent by her father. There was no note. It was the last communication I ever received from their family. It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. It was the final, quiet confirmation that they knew she was in the wrong. The battle was over. Final update. It's been 6 months now. The seasons have changed. The raw anger has faded, replaced by a quiet sense of peace I haven't felt in years. I'm writing this final update not because there's more drama, but because there isn't. And that, I've learned, is the most satisfying revenge of all. Life moves on. My apartment is fully my own now. I repainted the living room, bought a new couch that is much more comfortable than the one Chloe picked out, and filled the empty closet space with my own things. I've started hobbies I let slide during my relationship, hiking on weekends, joining a weekly trivia team with some old friends. I'm rediscovering the person I was before I became half of a we. The aftermath for Chloe has been, from what I've heard, difficult. The news about Mark being married spread through our old social circle and solidified her reputation as someone who makes disastrously selfish choices. Her friends, Jessica and Lauren, eventually distanced themselves. Supporting the victim is one thing. Being associated with a homewrecker who blew up her own life is another. Their loyalty, it turned out, was as shallow as the narrative they were pushing. Chloe had to get a job, something she hadn't needed to worry about for a while. She's working in retail, a significant step down from the career she had before she quit. She's still living with her parents. There's a certain poetic justice in that. She wanted to escape the perceived boredom of a stable life with me, and instead, she ended up in a state of arrested development, back in her teenage bedroom. Her father, David, and I ran into each other at a hardware store a couple of months ago. It was awkward for a moment, and then he walked over, shook my hand, and asked how I was doing. We made small talk for a few minutes. Before he left, he looked at me and said, "She's in therapy. She's working on herself. I hope one day she understands the good things she threw away." It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. It was closure, the real kind. The best revenge hasn't been watching her struggle. I take no joy in her unhappiness. The best revenge has been my own success and peace of mind. I'm thriving. My work is going well, my friendships are stronger than ever, and I'm genuinely happy. I've started dating again, casually. It's nice to meet new people without the weight of a shared future pressing down. A few weeks ago, my trivia team was at a bar, and I saw her. Chloe. She was with a group of people I didn't recognize. Our eyes met across the room. For a second, I saw a flash of the old Chloe, the one I fell in love with. Then it was gone, replaced by a look of deep, profound regret. She gave me a small, sad smile and then looked away. I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing at all. And I knew in that moment that I had truly won. She wanted to find closure with her ex. Instead, she gave me closure from her. And for that, I am genuinely, finally grateful. Thank you all for listening. It's time to sign off and move on.